back, ladies and gentlemen. We will now move on to the next standalone session titled Riding the Coming Growth Opportunity with Security. And we are delighted to have with us Preekshit Gupta, business leader, fraud and risk intelligence, RSA, Asia Pacific and Japan. Over to you, Preekshit.
Thank you, Evan, for my introduction, and hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. So let me just share my screen. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So I think great perspective from the previous session we had with Mr. Balaji and Sridhar, hearing from them how COVID and the current environment has actually impacted the banking landscape and how ICICI Bank is coping up to the new normal we are all living in right now. So in the next 15 minutes or so, I would like to give the perspective from our side, which is the cybersecurity industry side, and touching upon a few topics which would be relevant to all of us, which will actually help us how we can ride the coming growth opportunity with cybersecurity. We all know that it's no secret that cybersecurity industry has grown exponentially over more than a decade due to the proliferation of high-profile cyber crimes. Viewing cybersecurity simply just to protect your data assets and cyber risk would actually leave a lot of opportunity on the table. Organizational leaders need to see cybersecurity as a business enabler that can actually accelerate growth within their organizations. Companies which view cybersecurity as from a myopic standpoint will actually lose out in the long term. We all know that we are in the age of digital disruption. Companies that embrace cybersecurity to protect their critical assets, empower mobile employees, modernize their internal IT infrastructure, and finally streamlining their compliances will definitely outpace their competitors in the long run than just mirroring and protecting their data. Hence, cybersecurity is definitely a powerful business enabler that can actually accelerate growth more in current times where they need to compete with intense competition and digital disruption. Ladies and gentlemen, with that context, I would like to dwell more on the topic and understand more how RSA perceives this as a risk on one side and business enabler on the other side for organizations globally. I'm sure you must be familiar with the picture which I've shown just now. I personally hope that everyone is doing safe during this unfolding of global COVID-19 pandemic. Clearly, we all know we are in the current crisis of unimaginable magnitude and scale and complexity which we have never dreamt of. Globally, it has impacted more than 4 million people and claimed 300,000 lives already. And unfortunately, the trend is on an uptrend. I know most of us are still confined to our homes, and depending on your locations, we are in various stages of lockdowns, and we still need to wear a mask at least for throughout the year, and obviously observe physical distancing. With this, the COVID-19 crisis has no doubt created a disruption and far-reaching impacts to various organizations globally. On one side, certain industries like airlines, hotels, retail have severely impacted financially. However, on the other side, we have seen organizations and sectors like healthcare, daily essentials, have actually risen up to the occasion in providing such essential services to people like us. They have actually embraced this disruption as a great opportunity. Regardless of their unique circumstances, organizations across the globe have had to deal with major challenges, and we foresee 4 critical areas where disruption has happened within the organizations. The first most is the business operations. Business operations, as we all know, were disrupted in various countries in various ways. Some organizations have gone actually into a full crisis management mode. The crisis has actually forced the acceleration of whatever digital transformation these organizations have actually gone through. The second one is the workforce. We have seen the workforce have started working remotely as much as possible. Stay-at-home orders by various governments have actually forced the organizations to actually put their workforce in the remotest way possible and hence able to deliver their critical responsibilities. The third one is the disruption of the supply chain. Supply chains in various sectors have actually disrupted. And we have actually seen that due to some of the essential services, what needs to be delivered, they actually need to actually look out for certain suppliers, alternate suppliers to deliver the essential and meet their production cycles. And the fourth one, which is actually brewing up a perfect storm, is the security and the risk management. Security and the risk which organizations face has also grown manifold now. Phishing has become the biggest entrant as a security vector impacting a lot of organizations. With more and more employees now using their own devices and organizations now actually allowing their own devices to get in, obviously there is a loss in the control which organizations can actually put within their employees. What this has basically done within the organization is having an impact in the response, what they need to actually provide to such disruptions, what they have felt over a period of time. So how majority of the organizations have responded is in 4 different stages. The first one is containing the disruption by taking some immediate steps and also to eliminate the impact and the practices to spread the impact of COVID-19. The second one is sustenance, sustaining to adjust the business operations. Once they do the containment and the sustenance of the services what they provide, they finally need to assess the impact of the disruption what it had in their businesses. And finally, the foremost, once they have put their house in order, they finally need to adapt to the new normal on how to basically run their business as usual in the longer term. Now with that, many kind of risks and frauds have actually emancipated due to such disruptions what has impacted various organizations. And some of them have been actually mentioned on this slide, whereas whether they wanted to expand the remote workforce securely, they want to properly access their data, complying to the addressing to the compliance changes, and also addressing heightened trends which are impacting the organizations. So we as RSA actually list down 8 critical areas what organizations need to cater to in today's time in order to meet the impact of the current crisis. The first one is managing the dynamic workforce. The second one is securing the cloud transformation. We have heard in our previous session as well that how cloud has transformed and embraced by a lot of organizations globally now, and within India we have seen that trend upticking, and how cloud has actually helped organizations to scale in the least possible time. So definitely there is a possibility of how to enable security in that cloud transformation journey. Third is mitigating cyber attack risks. We all know data breaches are happening every day, and we need to see and assess that how basically we can actually cater to such kind of attacks which are happening on organization. Data governance and privacy, again, is a big area of risk within the organizations which they need to cater to. Managing process automation risks. Now, this is very important because while the processes were still in place, they need to automate it as much as possible to respond in least possible times. And finally, building business resiliency. How fast they can actually adapt and basically revert to a lot of attacks which are impacting the organizations. Now, with this global disruption, it also exposes new opportunities and old risks, which we all know. Middle, if you see, is an organization. On one side, they have to cater to their end customers and consumers. On the other side, they need to actually face the fraudsters who may impact their organization. It's like a double-edged sword. On one side, they have to deliver to the consumers. On the other side, they need to put their processes and controls so that their cyber attacks and their threats get minimized as much as possible. The consumers, like you and me, end of the day, they expect secure and frictionless way to interact. However, the fraudsters are trying to monetize this opportunity. And hence, the 3 C's in today's present state, as I call it, is actually cashless, which was the past stage, wherein the governments and all of us were actually moving towards a cashless society, promoting digital as much as possible, to the present state, which is contactless, where nobody wants to touch each other, or in terms of payments also, they want to minimize the contact as much as possible, and finally the future, which will be COVID-less. Now, with these changing market dynamics, we have to transform on how we look at fraud as a business problem. How do we perceive fraud and risk as a business problem? And with these different vectors which are impacting the organizations and the changes they need to adapt to, such as Fintech and API economy, adopting to the new e-payment and e-commerce regulations, Internet of Entities, what they need to launch to, it is making the environment more and more complex in today's time. He basically mentions that the technology and risk drivers in today's time, we can categorize into 4 things. One is the Fintech emerging technologies. Now, in today's time, we all know, and we heard as well in the previous session, that how banks are actually partnering with a lot of Fintech companies and basically making these services open and available to consume and be relevant to today's millennials. The second is the API economy, which is fueling the data. Third is the mobile. Mobile itself is actually a bank in today's time. So everything mobile is actually what we need to look at from a technology and risk driver standpoint. We started with mobile banking almost 20 years back globally. However, everything is on mobile in today's time. And lastly, Internet of Things. We have seen how smart devices are actually infiltrating our personal lives. It's no more Internet of Things, it's actually entity of things now, that every entity in today's place is actually injected by Internet to make it smarter and smarter. In the next section, we will actually look at that how fraudster community is actually resilient in today's time. They are actually, and we need to see that we as organization, are we resilient to or not? We all understand that cybercrime is a business end of the day. Like we run our own businesses in today's lives, cybercrime is also run as a business in the darknet world. They have their own organizations, they have their own people, they have their own recruitment, which is making cybercrime and cybercrime a sophisticated business end of the day. It simply means that organizations have to be more and more careful in today's time. And they use different tactics to impact the organization. We have heard of the age-old phishing techniques, and which is very prevalent even in today's time. It's no more phishing which is getting impacted. it's everything which is ishing, which is phishing, wishing, smishing, whatever form it can basically impact an organization. It's finally how it is originated and how it is impacting the organizations and customers. Credential stuffing, social media. Social media has become the biggest vector in today's time in terms of originating a lot of frauds and cyber attacks in today's time. Business logic manipulations and everything, and every tactic what the fraudster uses actually has an app in their own world. These are some examples of how the fraudster community actually communicates in the cyber crime underground market, and how actually the discussions happen while originating some similar kind of attacks what we all are speaking in today's time. And you'll be surprised that the whole market, though we cannot understand as a layman, however, it is very organized market which runs in the cyber underground. They have their, as I mentioned, they have their own apps, they have their own platforms to originate attacks, they have their own strategies, and hence they just use different techniques in today's time to actually impact organizations. And we have all read it in the last couple of months, various regulatory authorities, even WHO has raised warnings, have come out with directives of how phishing, which is the age-old technique, however, still very prevalent in today's time in terms of impacting organizations and actually causing financial troubles to a lot of brands globally. Finally, in terms of the fraudsters operation during global pandemic, what we foresee from RSA is that fraudsters are becoming more and more resilient in today's time. And even they are working from home very efficiently, like we are working from home. So don't basically perceive them as people who don't act and who don't professionally act on a lot of things. They use the same techniques under new disguise. So as much as we as organizations prepare ourselves using different cybersecurity tools, in the same way they also have similar tools in order to plan an attack in an organization. And obviously they care for their community. As much as we care for each other in today's time, fraudsters are a close-knit group and they care for each other. And finally, social engineering is used to take advantage of people's fear end of the day. These are some of the data which I wanted to share, which is basically impacting, which we saw RSA as globally in terms of the COVID-19 impact, in terms of different merchant categories. I won't take much time as I know the time is running out, so I just want to skip a couple of slides, but this is some of the trends we saw in the industry in the last couple of months since it was having an impact. Obviously, some industries, as we see, had taken a lot of hit, and some industries have actually taken transactions to a different volume altogether. So I would like to summarize my talk by actually giving you a summary of what I have spoken about. One is that transaction volumes and value had actually gone down. However, in the digital space, it has actually gone up, and it is becoming stable now, depending from country to country. E-commerce merchant categories, we are seeing different trends across verticals. And obviously, from a channel standpoint, we heard in our last session as well, we are seeing a great uptrend on using digital as a channel. How RSA helps, in basically protecting such kind of threats is basically through our fraud and risk intelligence suite of services. We protect the consumer digital journey by securing interaction and transactions and protecting organizations across the digital risk. So through our solutions like RSA Adaptive Authentication and Fraud Action Services, we are actually helping organizations minimizing the digital risk in their financial and consumer portals, and finally helping them from a reputational and brand loss. And this is finally the recommendation and best practices which we basically tell the industry. One is that keep sustaining your operations. Educating your consumers is as much critical as putting systems and controls in place. Phishing and cyber attacks mitigation should be your key priority in today's time. You should keep assessing security posture disruption, and finally, keep adapting to the new normal and implement changes from an omni-channel standpoint. Thank you again for listening to me. I hope the session gave great insights on our thought leadership and trends, what we foresee globally. Please don't forget to subscribe RSA on various social media platforms to give you more insights on what we do on day-to-day basis. Thank you and stay safe always. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Preekshit. Thank you for covering riding the coming growth opportunity with security. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts.